Elinor, I'm so happy that you've joined us on Coffee with Curtis. I've been excited to get this onto my calendar and to bring you onto the podcast and chat about all things that excite you and drive your work and your life. So welcome to Coffee with Curtis.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
Amazing. I actually feel like we had a bout of Elinor every day this week on social media, and I'm viewing it that they were the warm-up acts for this show.
To be honest, it's probably just how your algorithm works on your LinkedIn, but let's just
Well, we're going to talk about some big themes today, but before we do that, I'd love to just begin with a quick 360 on you. Describe your background and yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So I was born in Israel, as you can probably detect from my accent. I moved to the UK 19 years ago. I did my master's here at LSE in organizational and social psychology. And I guess I always worked in organizations where I really truly cared about their mission, whether it's educational, community building. I worked a lot with the Jewish community. I ran the Tel Aviv University Trust here to raise money for the university, and I was one of the founding team members of JW3, which is kind of one of the largest community centers for Jewish people in Europe, I think. So really, really passionate about that. And then I decided to scale and do things on a larger scale, basically do good things on a larger scale. So I moved to the technology industry because I figured, there I can really grow. And I started working for Zinc VC, which is an incubator that builds kind of social impact ventures. And it opened my eyes on kind of the powerful tool that technology is to achieve really the benefit of the kind of for the global for the globe for society, and really it opened my appetite to learn even more. And so I wanted to join the UKIsrael Tech Hub. That's where I am now. That gives me a great overview on anything to do from social impact to government, how government works, and how obviously the tech ecosystem works. And I'm happy to kind of elaborate on that a bit later.
Amazing. You've done what I think a lot of people are thinking about now, because we've got this big, the big quit or the great resignation. But, you have transitioned from, non-profit world to the tech world. How did you find that transition? Because typically, and perhaps maybe that's changed in more recent times, but it wasn't such an easy jump.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And you know what? When I said to people I want to move to tech, some of them looked at me as if I'm crazy. I mean, I've been doing social impact non-profit work for a decade then, and there's no way you're gonna get in. And I mean, one of the things that I really learned along the journey is to build my network and to be very assertive. And it was hard. There was lots of kind of moments where I doubted myself, but I think there were quite a few people that really got me. They really understood that, all the experience and the skills that I've gained in the non-profit world were actually super valuable for the commercial and the tech industry. So, for example, business development, getting funding and sponsorship. We were a very, very lean team at JW3. So this is really taught me to work very hard and create a lot with very little. So, thanks to really good people along the way, I got some opportunities and kind of taught myself about the ecosystem, and got to where I am now.
I think what I've noticed, just in my own career, and particularly recently, I've really upped the networking game, and that often is where it always comes back to. The people that you surround yourself with are often the bridge to what you're trying to achieve. It sounds like that was very similar for you.
Absolutely. And I think one of the mistakes that I've done actually working, at that time in the nonprofit, I was so busy with survival mode almost, on your behalf of your organization, that I forgot about myself. I forgot about promoting myself. And so I realized when I left that organization that no one outside of my immediate network had a clue about all the things that I've done, the money I raised and the community I built. And I almost had to kind of build my reputation from the ground up. And that's a mistake that I don't want to repeat, and that I'm also trying to help other people, not to do again. And that's why I also became, I guess, an I'm Remarkable facilitator, which really helps women and underrepresented groups to learn how to promote themselves and build their network, because it's a tool that helps you build a network.
I think probably the times have changed as well around that. Back, 15, 20 years ago when, we were entering the workplace, it was all about the company brand. You were a cog in a wheel, and, you didn't matter. You could be replaced, you could be moved on. But actually, with the emergence of places like LinkedIn, which obviously have changed dramatically in recent years, that personal brand is so important these days. And you can shout about your achievements. I mean, I was actually speaking to a nonprofit last week, and they've never really told their story, either as a nonprofit or individually, the amazing stories that different people in that organization have that they should be sharing with people. And I said to them, it's not just because you want to do good. It's good for you. This is your personal brand that selfishly you should be pushing. Exactly
what you just said. And I actually held the other day an I'm Remarkable workshop for a bunch of nonprofits.
Just for our listeners, explain what the I Am Remarkable mission is.
Sure. So the mission is, it's a Google initiative. And the mission is really to help, as I said, women and underrepresented groups to learn the skills and to have the mindset of promoting their achievements confidently and openly, whether it's, on social media, but also in their own workplace, in their own networks, to know about it, kind of speak about your successes. And it's not something that comes natural to a lot of people, but it is a skill that, as I said, you can learn. And what I found from, with nonprofits specifically is that because they are tie in so much into the organization mission, as you said, they forgot to promote themselves. They forgot to kind of almost detach themselves from that and say, I've done this. But the world around us does require us to be, kind of stand on our own 2 feet and talk about ourselves. And that's kind of the problem sometimes with people who work in nonprofit, where they're so passionate about what they do and they forget to talk about themselves. But as you said, nowadays the trend is kind of moving into also organizations understanding that the individual employee brand is important to the organizational brand, and they're actually encouraging their employees to promote themselves. And I see it with the number of workshops that I'm being booked to do. It's insane, from private sector to social sector.
I think what's remarkable about the change in industry and in work is that, maybe our parents' generation, they would stay in jobs for a very long time. And that is a very rare occurrence these days, particularly in the tech world. People move around every 2, 3, maybe 4 years, and I think it was Reid Hoffman who described this as people today do tours of duty. Almost, a military reference. They're doing tours of duty in different companies, and they're acquiring different skill sets throughout that journey. And it's much more about the skills that they're honing and taking with them on their own personal mission through their career. And I think that's something that the marketplace is now starting to understand as well.
Absolutely. And also within a workplace, you cannot expect that people would know about, what you do if you don't tell them, because your workplaces are so dispersed, and now we're working a lot virtually, and you don't have those coffee conversations when you can say, by the way, I'm working on this. And so you really need to create those opportunities for that, for self-promotion. And that's super important to kind of put yourself forward in front of different people inside and outside your immediate network.
How have you found working from home? The only reason I'm bringing this up is I was talking this week with some friends on it, and for me, it was okay. I prefer going to an office. I'm perhaps more traditional in that respect, but I noticed this week that actually we volunteer to have work experience people come in. So this week we've got somebody who's nearly 18, never been in the workplace before, and he's doing 2 or 3 weeks work experience with us. If he had to do that at home, it would completely fail. There's no way that he would ever get the skills, the nuance, the moments, just the little, like you say, those coffee moments, and just the ability to just quickly ask questions. I'm not sure. I think for established teams, yeah, I'm sure it works. How was work from home for you, and what are your views on it?
So for me, I mean, I was working from home also before the pandemic because all my team is based.
You're a veteran.
Yeah, all my team is based in the British embassy in Tel Aviv. And so I guess for me, actually having them all online with me, virtually with me, was a benefit. You know, I was actually enjoying that we're all equals in that sense. But because, you know, I wasn't actually able to go to meetings, and this is where I found it difficult, you know, to build that trust with people where you need to kind of sell them a service, where you need to, you know, build a new partnership. This is something that I find challenging to do on Zoom when your time is so, you know, it's all very strict and you are one of many, many, many other Zooms that the people in front of you are having. So I guess on building trust, that's a difficulty. But actually on productivity, I must say that my productivity has really expanded massively because I'm able to do much more, many more projects and initiatives, and it's great. You just need to have the balance.
Yeah, no, well, it sounds like it's worked for you, which is great. And let's segue into your role as the head of strategic partnerships for the UKIsrael Tech Hub, which is an initiative of the UK Foreign Office, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Just give us a sense of what that office is designated to do, and how you specifically manage your role. As I understand it, you're really managing the ecosystem of the Israeli innovation to match with venture capital, big corporates in the UK. What does that look like? How's your week to week?
Exactly. So, I mean, what's interesting about the hub is actually the background to how we were established. So we were established 10 years ago by the UK government because they recognized Israel as an innovation powerhouse, and they wanted to kind of enable the UK market to tap into the best innovation that's coming from there. So there was an agreement between David Cameron at the time and Bibi Netanyahu to start the hub, and we were basically established as almost like a mechanism to help those corporates, VCs in the UK, to grow via innovation that's coming from Israel that really matches their needs. And so we are always on our day-to-day, we're looking for those synergies. Where does Israel has strong innovation, where the UK has really need and a big enough market to kind of create those synergies. And at the moment, our focus sectors are on healthcare, fintech and cyber, and clean tech. And under clean tech comes anything to do with food tech, agri-tech, energy. And for each of those sectors, we have sector managers that sit at the British Embassy in Tel Aviv, and they're embedded into the tech ecosystem there. And they help me to then bring all their knowledge and all the startups when we are talking to the British corporates. And I guess my day-to-day is extremely interesting because it's very, very different. There's no day that is, like another. And I also have quite a lot of freedom of creation. So, for example, when we, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we saw that there is a need to help women, because they were lagging behind before that in tech, so we were really trying to kind of promote them. I established together with my team at the British Embassy, the UKIsrael Women Leading Innovation Network, which is an example of how we were able as a team to take an idea and really utilize our position, our unique position in the government, and bring it to life. So that's kind of where I am now. in conversations with VCs, with corporates, kind of showcasing Israeli innovation and how it can match and address their innovation needs.
Such an interesting role, I guess, for you also as a born Israeli, but obviously you've lived in the UK for a long time. You're almost at like sort of the intersection of being an ambassador for both sides and bringing everybody together. Such a cool role.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I feel like I have that dual personality almost, that I'm an Israeli for the Brits, and I'm almost like a British for the Israelis, because, after 20 years here in the UK, you adapt a little bit. But yeah, it is a value, because I managed to turn on and turn off those two bits of my personality whenever I need to.
I say to friends that don't live in Israel, when I'm here, my elbows are out, and when I'm in the UK, I can just drop my elbows, and it's a different scenario.
Exactly. It reminds me of my one of my daughters when she wanted to move schools. She told me, "Mommy, I need you to turn on your Israeli and get me into that new school." So it's exactly that.
So, two questions for you. The first one is actually about perception. So we've talked about your role as essentially you're an ambassador for both these countries to bring together the tech to business. How do you find companies and VCs perceiving Israel? Obviously, Israel comes with its baggage and its story, and I'm sure that's something that you probably don't come across so often, because you're talking business and people want to get down to what they can achieve. But what's the perception of Israel in the business world in the UK?
So we are very lucky, because I guess because we're doing tech, we work in tech essentially. So the reputation of Israel is very, very strong in that industry. As you know, Israel just had a record year in raising funds of $25 billion. And this really speaks for itself, and all the innovation that comes from there. So in a sense, my work is quite easy in that respect, and I don't need to kind of sell a whole product anew, if you see what I mean. But when it comes to the perception of working with Israeli culture, I guess, it's perceived as a little bit too maybe direct, very fast paced. So we do need, and I guess that's what we do really well at the Hub, is we are kind of the cultural translator, or kind of the bridge builder between the startup ecosystem in Israel and the corporate ecosystem in the UK. I mean, startup and corporates are anyway two different entities in how they, behave.
Of course.
And then you've got Israel and the UK on top. So I guess, when I speak to startups, I always encourage them to kind of plan ahead, by considering, the time that it might take for them to get a response from the British side, having a very, very clear value proposition, prepare very well for meetings. We work with them on how they present. And at the same time, we ask the British side to really select decision makers for those startup meetings, who can ask the right question and also speed up the processes a little bit. And we also find kind of key corporate contact to work to make kind of smooth interaction for the startup as possible. So we have kind of an ambassador for the corporate, so no one gets frustrated. So that's kind of what we do on a daily basis, I guess.
Amazing. So interesting. It's actually similar to some of the work I've been doing in the UAE following the Abraham Accords, that, Israel is a very direct society, particularly in business, but just generally, I've been shopping this morning for the weekend, and, it's direct. People want to get on with things. And in the UAE, it's a very classy, civilized society, very well educated people. But they also want to go at a pace that is different. And they want to know, famously, I think it was the Crown Prince who said, typically Emiratis want to know more about your mother and father before they get down to talking about your business. They want to feel that they know you. And I think that's actually something that does happen in Israeli society, but less so in business, I think. So I think you're spot on. Last question whilst we talk about your work at the Hub. How has Brexit impacted the thinking of the UK government in terms of how it's outreaching to other countries around the world? Obviously, it's a completely new era now for the UK, and it has to open its arms even more so with existing and new relationships. Are you seeing a change in the work that you're doing when it comes to UK-Israel relations?
So I think what we recognize, and of course I'm talking for, on behalf of myself, not the government, but I do recognize that the UK and Israel are now almost kind of a standalone from Europe. Each country raises more tech investments and producing more unicorns and IPOs than the rest of Europe combined. I think the UK was $40 billion, if I'm not mistaken, in 2021. And Israel, as I said before, 25 billion. And combined, it's more than Europe. So very, very strong entities. And I guess all the three of us, Europe, UK, and Israel together, I guess we can really form kind of strong unity. And one of the things that I have seen in my work is that not so far after Brexit, I guess 2019, I was contacted by Tech Italia at that time, which is basically a UK-based innovation hub that's trying to promote Italy to the UK, Italian startups to the UK, to start collaborating. And we basically formed an alliance of similar innovation hubs that are based in the UK, but their ecosystems are in Europe and Israel. So myself, I'm representing Israel, then I have Tech Italia, Austria, Switzerland, and we called it the Global Tech Connect. And I guess the reason why we came together is it was fueled by Brexit. Because of that, detachment, we wanted to keep the connection going. We wanted to help our ecosystems, our startups from our ecosystem come into the UK and establish their businesses here. But I guess we also wanted to connect our ecosystem to one another. And we held a very, very successful boot camp on clean tech last June, where we collaborated and brought together our knowledge, our expertise, our network, and we helped a few startups from each of our countries to kind of expand to the UK. So that's just an example of something that happened as a result.
So interesting, and we'll segue into another topic. And I won't ask you if you've been to any government garden parties recently, but
definitely not.
yeah, cheese and wine, not here. So let's talk about another passion of yours, because you are a Women in Tech 100 winner. For 2021. As you mentioned already, you do a lot of mentoring and facilitation to help women and minority groups to realize their potential in their own personal journeys. Let's talk about, and I've sort of termed this, what women want when it comes to work. I don't want to cite Mel Gibson too much from his movie, because he's a controversial character when it comes to anti-Semitism or anti-Israel. But let's dive a little bit further into this topic, because I'm somebody who I think would be fairly typical of most people today, that 100% supportive of women having equality of opportunity, to enable them to do whatever it is that they want to do in their lives without any barriers in front of them. But I think there's a gap in understanding, and I'm talking for myself, and maybe other people will resonate with what I'm saying, in what does that mean in the real world? What does that mean in terms of enabling women in the workplace? Does that mean positive discrimination? Does that mean, does it mean that we should have stipulation over quotas and boards and other things like that. Just start to take us on a journey. I've got other questions around this, but let's start to open it up.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a question that I think about it every day, because every day there's a new report, right? It's so documented how hard it is for women. I specifically talk about in the tech industry, how hard it is for women founders to access capital than men. I think in 2019 there was a kind of a report by the British Business Bank that said that for every £1 of venture capital investment in the UK, female founders got just 1p, and the rest went to either mixed kind of founder team or only male. So we all aware of that, and I always think, if I kind of take a step back, on the one hand, you've got those who talk about social systems, right? Institutions, recruitment practices, what you just mentioned, the discrimination, raising awareness, education, unconscious bias, and all of that. Things that we do kind of as a collective that play a part in women roles in the workplace, and make sure that they don't have lower salaries, make sure that we put CEO in women in posts. And the other day I read actually a book called Invisible Women by Caroline Criado-Perez, I think her name is, but really shows us the world largely built for and by men. Basically, things that you would not think about, the way that the transportation system works, the way that the roads are built, the way that medicine is being produced. It's, the research that goes around that, government policy. It's all kind of with the gender lens of men. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have those who really shine kind of the spotlight on the women themselves, their personality traits and behaviors. So women that are often claimed to be without much confidence, not taking enough risks, not demanding that salary. So I guess in recent times, and you probably also heard it, on social media, there is that thing of asking women not to talk too apologetically. That we are always saying, if that makes sense, no worries if not, to avoid that.
But is that actually a reality? Do women stereotypically more often than men assert themselves less? Is that a nature-based attribute that needs to be worked on? I mean, I'm a fairly agreeable person. I don't consider myself like crazy assertive, but is that more nature rather than situation?
So I think it is really on us to see how this system versus individual traits play or interplay. So, for example, if we're talking about lack of mentorship and relatable role models, generally speaking, in the tech industry, this is a system issue, right? But it can have that ripple effect on women's confidence. When you are the only women in the room, you may have more self-doubt on whether you can actually have the skills to grow a business. When you are only pitching to men investors who ask you specific questions, you might develop that imposter syndrome and sell yourself short as a result. So it's not one or the other. It's really a continuum. I see it. Each end influences the other, and each of us might need to kind of gravitate towards, the end that we see that's right for us, depending on our experience and the context, and also depending on where we think we can make more impact. When I do the I'm Remarkable workshops to help women with self-promotion, it's not because I think women have less confidence. It's because, or they should have more confidence. I think it's because I see self-promotion as a tool. If you see what I mean, I see it as a tool to give them. So I'm not coming from a place that I want to change women and make them more like men. I want to give them more tools so they can become more successful.
Question for you around that statistic that you gave, that only 1 penny in a pound is given to female founders via VCs or investors. That sounds like a drastic, disproportionate situation. And I can't believe, because I don't believe that we live in anymore. We definitely for sure did at different times in history. But we don't live in the West in some crazy patriarchy that's women are tyrannized to a crazy extent day on day. I don't believe that we live in that world. And I really hope we don't. I mean, maybe I just don't see it, but I'm not a woman. But there's got to be something else behind the fact that 99% are going to mixed or male-led businesses that is different, that is not related to the fact that the founder is a woman. Unless you can show me other statistics, maybe. I don't know specifically.
I mean, look, this statistics is even worse because it equates to 5 billion of investment going to all male founders. And it's a shame because there was another report by Alison Rose, the CEO of NatWest, who showed that female founded businesses could be worth 250 billion pounds to the UK economy if women started to scale new businesses at the same rate as UK men. So I do think that there is a gap.
But what's the gap there? Because you've just quoted Alison, who's I'm presuming a woman,
yeah.
CEO of NatWest.
Yes.
She obviously hasn't been held back in her career. Why on that side around tech is there this particular disproportionate figure? It's shocking.
It is very shocking, and I think on that we need to go back into education, into stereotypes, into the subject that women choose, that young girls choose to take on in school and in university, and then pursue a career. It's not something that happens only when you think about a startup. It happens much earlier, and then it goes to as I said before, system versus individual traits. If you are born into a family that encourages, let's say, or society that encourages men to go and study math and computing and the girls to study, I don't know, something else, then this gap expands and expands, and you need to start from the beginning almost. And that's why I'm very keen also to help young girls get into technology. And I actually supported an organization that's called She Code in Israel that helps young girls from a very early age, at least to try. It's not to say that this is the only way to succeed, but at least to try and have that opportunity. It's really about opportunities.
I think you're right. It's about equality of opportunities. I mean, I sat in a meeting on Sunday, actually, for one of our clients, and there were 16 people around the table. It's a female CEO, although I hate using that term because I think she's just a CEO. There were only 3 guys out of the 16 people around the table. So 13 women and 3 men. So obviously change is coming and is here already. But I wonder whether some of the difficulties relate to perhaps the nature of a woman's life compared to a man's life, typically. Only women, for example, can have children. And women typically have to cram in more of their life early than a man has to. A man has, years ahead of him. He can go and do what he wants. Whereas a woman has to fit in her education, fit in her career, fit in having that baby if she chooses to have children. And that has to happen at a certain point because at a certain point she won't be able to have children. I'm wondering whether that just natural dynamics play a role in what we're seeing today. Because again, I don't believe we live in this tyrannical society in the West where, women are being, victimized in the way that maybe some perhaps on the far left would have you believe.
Well, we are not being victimized, that's for sure, but we are, there's a lot of unseen bias, things that we even don't know, or things that we take for granted. When you talk about having children at a certain age, yes, that's for sure. It's happening, and sometimes, women choose to put their career on hold to be with their children. However, it is down to also the company to encourage women to come back to work, to give also paternity leave for the dads to help. and now we see a lot, I don't know if you had a chance to see it on social media, a lot of women that are being hired being pregnant. And this is something that we didn't see before. You know, if you're pregnant and you are visually pregnant, no one would hire you a few years ago. They would not tell you that it's because of that, but you probably wouldn't go to the interview. And now there's a whole trend that's opening up those doors for women. So it's things that we are so used to seeing, and now that we kind of turn them on their heads and say, actually, it can be done differently.
That's so interesting. That's a really interesting insight. I actually spoke about this with my son before we came on the podcast, because I mentioned that I was meeting with you for this, and was talking about some of the issues. And it's true. It is a decision that if you're a CEO, male or female, and you're running a fast-paced, growing business, and somebody comes in who is either visibly pregnant or you sense that might happen, that must pay an unconscious bias in your decision. But it's not that it's anti-woman in the same way that I think you might be suggesting. I think it's a reality of their business. So I think it's, if you need somebody to do a job and it's then, and you can't have them off for a year because you need that role, that's where I think it becomes mixed and misunderstood as to making a decision around who you should hire.
And you know, I come from a social psychology background, so I always look at the way people think. And you know, if when it comes to fundraising, you know, when you have investors wanting to invest in a company, at the end of the day, it's really about trust, right? It's about trust between two people. And you're more likely to trust people from your own network. And so if women are not in that network, then you will not get, and they will not get those warm introductions, right? And so it will be much, much harder for them to even start a conversation and get the funding. So it is about having those, as we said before, opportunities, and having that network access. And that's something I'm really, really trying to help, you know, promote as part of the UKIsrael Women Leading Innovation Network that we're running, and to the women that I mentor, and open those doors for them, that they will have the same level of opportunities.
It's amazing work that you're doing. I wonder what your take is on, I guess, motherhood. I know you're a mother, and do you sense, again, this might be a loaded question, but do you sense that potentially motherhood is being victimized in the reverse? It's very, very subjective, right? It's a very, very subjective decision. And I always say, you know, do what feels right to you as a mother. And myself as a mother, I mean, I kind of took the decision to work and kind of balance my work life in a way that was right for me, which meant working part-time when the girls were young. But it's not a decision that is right for everyone. And I saw that when I came out of that, I paid a little bit of a price, because I was a little bit behind those women or men who continued as normal. So I guess it's not something that we can, you know, decide for people, but it is, as an employer, you do have the responsibility to really take into account your employees' circumstances and choices, and be as fair as you can, given the business needs as well. Interesting. Well, look, I think it's a huge topic that we could speak about for many, many hours, and I'd love to be continue to be educated on, because it's important. And as we head towards the end of the podcast, I want to talk to you about mission-led businesses and organizations, and why this is such a big trend today. As somebody who has obviously spent a significant portion of your career working in non-profits, and obviously, as we said at the beginning, transitioning into the tech world, there is this trend towards both company level having mission and purpose and social impact behind their businesses, as well as employees making decisions around job choices based on the company mission. And first of all, why do you think that has become such a big trend? I've got my own views on it that I'll share after you go first.
Yeah, so I mean, I also see that in recent years. I see the kind of demographics like the millennials, for example, that, you know, they require more than just superficial return of investment or, you know, just to work somewhere where they really align their profits with their values to kind of make the world a better place. And I actually see a lot of women in different ages come to me and say, you know, I decided to leave the bank where I work, or to leave you know, the other organization where I work and do something meaningful. And you know, it's a big question. I mean, in terms of what's driving it, it could be a lot around the kind of the big issues of climate change, that people really understand that it's their role to do something about it. It could be the way this generation is being brought up, being so empowered by technology and being so connected to places, you know, outside of their immediate network. I mean, in Israel, when I grew up, I'm sorry if I sound like a dinosaur, I did not have, you know, the ability to know exactly what's happening in Africa or you know, places that are really struggling. I did not have those tools unless I would listen to the news every day, and then in Israel you wouldn't necessarily hear about this. So the kind of the awareness around that is very, very high. And then when it comes to impact investing, which is an area that I'm very passionate about, you know, we see incredible entrepreneurs that are trying to solve societal problems, but are often overlooked by traditional venture capital and limited by the amount of capital available for them by nonprofits and philanthropies. So I guess that's why impact investing is so strong, because they realize that they can be a whole new way of making money and doing good. And it's no wonder that this industry is now worth $700 billion globally.
Wow. I think what's interesting is probably that generational change that you mentioned. You know, the jobs that I had early on in my career, I certainly did not pay any attention to the perhaps values of the company or whether there was any particular mission behind it. It was a job, and that has changed, as you say, because of the nature of communication and you know, news availability, and I think just a more acute sense of people wanting to be aligned with values and purpose.
Absolutely.
But I think it maybe also aligns with, I think society has changed, and maybe, you know, perhaps people are less religious than they were in previous generations. I think there's more of a breakdown of family structure than that we would probably notice more than ever before. Community has changed, and with that, community is often where you work, and you often want to then do those things that empower you with those people that you spend a lot of time with. So I think that might be also playing into the way that people still want belonging and community. They're not finding it in maybe the places that we've thought of traditionally, but work is taking over that role. And I think of myself, I have changed in my views. You know, would I buy certain products today that have certain values around you know, whatever they're doing in the world? Yeah, I probably would make buying decisions differently, and that is a change. Would I buy Ben and Jerry's today? No. Would I, you know, these are decisions that I'm making because of the value system that I have vis-a-vis the company. So I think it's probably only a good thing, and ultimately people only want to do good inherently, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it also goes back to what I said about being empowered and seeing that, you know, we can make a difference, because unlike, you know, in previous years when we didn't have those global communication and technology, we were very much aligned with our workplace and kind of defined by it. But now we can be our own people. And, you know, with one post, we can make such a difference to other people. And so this empowerment of us as individuals really, I think, kind of pushed us and almost kind of opened the appetite for us to do more for others.
Well, look, the good news is that with people like you in the world making an impact and bringing change and delivering the ability for people to become remarkable, I think we are in good hands. It has been amazing having you on the podcast. I definitely could speak to you for a lot longer, but I know you've got a full day ahead of you, so we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being on Coffee with Curtis.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.